Hello everyone. In last video we have discussed the various aspects of the disintegration of Soviet Union. Today we'll overlook the timeline of disintegration of the Soviet Union. So here given 1985 March, Mikhail Gorbachev elected as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, appoints Boris Yeltsin as the head of the Communist Party in Moscow, initiates a series of reforms in the Soviet Union. So here, Mikhail Gorbachev became the general secretary in 1985, and in Moscow, Boris Yeltsin became the Communist Party leader, head of the Communist Party in that Russia, under the Russia country. So in 1988, independence movement begins in Lithuania, later spreads to Estonia and Latvia. So here, as we know that different nationalist movements rising during the Gorbachev period. So here in 1988, in Lithuania, the first movement is start in there, and later it Estonia and Latvia all are spread this nationalist movement, independent movement. That's 1989 October, Soviet Union declares that the Warsaw Pact members are free to decide their own futures. Berlin Wall falls in November. So here in 1989, the Soviet Union declares that any country can withdraw their agreements or their proposals with the Warsaw Pact, and they are free from their wherever they want to choose their military affairs or whatever the economic affairs they can choose from their side. So in during that year 1989, Berlin Wall also fall. In that Berlin, East Berlin and West Berlin become together unified after break down that Great Wall of Berlin. 1990 February, Gorbachev strips the Soviet Communist Party of its 72 years long monopoly on power by calling on the Soviet Parliament Duma to permit multi-party politics. So here in 1990, Gorbachev allows to the raise or allows the people to perform different political or form different political party and perform or participate in political affairs by their own interest or own like whatever the ideology they have, they can form any political party and they can perform in political sphere under that Soviet system. 1990 March, Lithuania becomes the first of the 15 Soviet republic to declare its independence. So in 1990, Lithuania, as mentioned here, earlier, they're raising a nationalist movement and they're demanding independence from that Soviet system. So here in 1990 March, they themselves declared that they are independent from that Soviet system. So Lithuania is the first country who declare as an independent state from Soviet Union system. 1990 June, Russia Parliament declares its independence from Soviet Union. So here, Russia Parliament also declare themselves free from that Soviet system. 1991 June, Yeltsin, no longer in the Communist Party, become the president of Russia. So Boris Yeltsin, as we know that he is very fond to the capitalist system. So he become he himself quit that communist system. No longer the members. Means he is coming out from that communist party, whatever the that system is under that communist system was there. That's one political party is there. So he himself withdraw from or like he come out from that membership of the political party system, and he's become the president of the Russia, independent Russia later. In 1991 August, the Communist Party hardliners stage an abortive coup against Gorbachev. So here, as we know that Gorbachev allowed other political systems to raise their voice, whatever their ideology they have to follow. They can raise whatever the revolution or like their movements, their showing against the parliament. He allowed making flexible system in Russia. So the Communist Party, other leaders who are the very orthodox towards the communist systems, they are very supportive to communist system. So they are raising a cough against that ideology or whatever the flexibility given by that Gorbachev. The COP wants to dominate those, and they wants to destroy all over the ideology whatever raising against the communist system. 1991 September, three Baltic republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania becomes United Nations members. So there in 1991 they are become the member of United Nations. In 1991, three states like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and later join NATO in March 2004. So later they are also become the member of NATO. 1991 in December, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine decide to annul the 1922 treaty on the creation of the United USSR and establish the Commonwealth of Independent States. So in 1991, as whatever the country wants to work together later, like after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, they are become established Commonwealth of the Independent States because the USSR already declared decline in that time. So the new organization or new structure formed by that particular the country who are getting independence, which named as Commonwealth of Independent States. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan joined the CIS. So all are that Middle East country or whatever the West Europe country who are the wants to work together after decline of the USSR. They are later joined that CIS, like a Commonwealth of Independent States, that organization. They joined again in there. Georgia joined later in 1993, and later Georgia also joined in 1993. Russia takes over the USSR seat in the United Nations. Takes over the whatever the Russia like USSR one of the permanent member of United Nations. So that as a heir of that particular organization, Russia took over that authority of that permanent seat of the United Nations. In 1991, December 25, Gorbachev resigns as the president of the Soviet Union, the end of the Soviet Union. So later in 1991, 25 December, totally that Soviet Union collapsed after Gorbachev resigned then himself from the post of General Secretary, and that day was the last day of that Soviet Union, the for USSR. That during from that 1970 22 to 1922 to 1991 December. This is the timeline of the Soviet Union.